Meet Erica Rankin, the founder and CEO of Brodo. She started Brodo in 2019 and after 4 years made the difficult decision to shut it down. In today's conversation, you'll learn how she started the business, why she decided to close it, and how to pivot from a failed business. I'm Kobe Ellison, and this is Story Playbook. Candid conversations with people who have tackled hard challenges, what worked, what didn't, and why. Talk a little bit about Brodo. I know you started the company in 2019. So just tell me that story. How did that all work out?
Yeah, so a year before in 2018, I competed in bodybuilding and I had to break up with a lot of my favorite treats. So obviously, I couldn't continue eating cakes and cookies and cookie dough and all the things that are full of sugar. So I got creative and I manipulated recipes. And one of those recipes was cookie dough. So I made these like protein cookie dough bites. They're vegan, had added protein, cleaner. Yeah, I guess long story short, I was working a 9 to 5. I was also prepping for my bodybuilding show, did my bodybuilding show, and then I just felt completely lost. So I booked a 3 month trip to Southeast Asia, went backpacking for 3 months. And when I got home, I decided to launch a business. And I kind of landed on that idea was the cookie dough bites that I actually made for myself back in my bodybuilding days.
Right. So this is 2019. So 2019, I remember I'm going through this, listening to your story. So at the end of 2019 is when you actually launched the product. Walk us through that. What was launch like? And you mentioned cookie, of all things cookie dough. I mean, did you consider yourself a product entrepreneur, or that just the one that kind of resonated with you?
I didn't even really know what entrepreneurship was. Back when I was working so I got a job in my field of psychology in 2017, and I did that for just over a year and a half, I believe. And I started listening to entrepreneurship podcasts. So I got really curious
Mhm.
about, pursuing this path. I never really knew it was something that I was able to do. And in terms of the actual business itself, when I got back from my trip, so I guess kind of like connecting all of the dots, July of 2018, I competed in bodybuilding. And then I think September of 2018, I quit my job. And then November of 2018, I started my backpacking trip for 3 months. And then a year later, I launched Brodo at the end of 2019. And I landed on Brodo because I asked myself, what is something that I'm passionate about? Food. I love food. I love creating healthier products. What does the market need? Well, at the time in Canada, we didn't really have a lot of healthier snacks in grocery stores. So I felt like this is something that a lot of people
Mhm.
would want. I kind of proved out the product already because I made it for myself, I made it for friends. I would share it on my Instagram and people would ask me if I would ever sell it. And I never thought anything of it. So that's kind of how I landed on the product itself. But I had no experience in the food space or the product
Right. So
space.
you are essentially already doing customer validation through social media and through your friends, which a lot of people struggle with. I know I've struggled with as well, trying to find that. So 2020, great time to actually launch a business, right? 2020, right? And we all know what happened there.
Yeah.
2020 had everything shut down. There's no retail. So walk us through the process of selling the product. How did you get it out? There's no retail. You can't get it to stores. Were you just doing through social, direct to consumer? Tell us that story.
It was a blessing and a curse at the same time. I was really excited because I had all these events planned. Because the best way to build a food business is to collect research, right? You want to get people to taste it, look at the packaging, you need that real time feedback. And also, when you're handing out samples and someone's eating your product, they can't really hide if they like it or not. Like you can see,
Hmm.
the look on their face, whether they're enjoying it or if they want more, or. So I wasn't able to get that real time data, which was really frustrating for me. So basically, everything got canceled, all the events I was supposed to do, all the farmers markets. And I remember thinking, okay, what am I going to do? So, and my product was refrigerated. So it was a little bit challenging to ship it.
Okay.
But I did end up leaning more into social media and building a community organically. So I just started showing all the behind the scenes of entrepreneurship on TikTok, on Instagram. And then I even started posting on LinkedIn as well and just documenting the journey. And in doing that, it resonated with a lot of people and they ended up following, along for the duration of me building the company. And like the cool thing is too, a lot of people were at home sitting on their couches, didn't really have a whole lot to do. And I was able to build a community pretty quickly that way.
Right. So it's amazing. It's just like those entrepreneurship journeys that people actually create. A lot of people always connect into those on social. I don't know why those are so powerful. So TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As far as that goes, I saw you had over, is it 300,000 organically through? So those were your main sources of, those were your customers.
Yeah.
Walk us through that year, 2020. What did you do during the pandemic? Were you just, I guess, refrigerating product, just shipping it out through a website or something? People would connect you through that, or they were hitting you up on these channels saying, "Hey, I want the product."
Launched on Shopify and I knew nothing about anything. I built my own website, learned from a YouTube tutorial, got my logo made off Fiverr for $50, made my own labels, did everything as scrappy as I could. I didn't want to invest a lot of money into the business because I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. And so I launched my Shopify website. I remember telling my friends and family that it was live and they were Googling Brodo and they couldn't find it on the first page. They couldn't find it on the second page. And then I learned what SEO was, and then this whole other world of, oh my gosh, like there's
Mm-hmm.
so much I don't know that I have to do. It's just like this big mountain of learnings that just come one after the next. And I thought I kind of had it figured out at that point, but I had no idea. And I kind of realized, oh crap, like people need to spend money on marketing to get customers, and I don't have money. I'm making this stuff at a commercial kitchen. And at the time, I was storing it in my trunk, driving around with the heat off for 3 months because I couldn't afford cold storage. I would probably get in trouble if anyone knew that, but it's in Canada, it's cold. It was fine, it was always frozen. And yeah, so I that's when I really turned to social media and just posting stuff. And I remember when I had my first viral TikTok in like I think it was March of 2020 or something, or maybe later a little bit later in the year. And I didn't really track my inventory to a T. I was kind of all over the place. I had some, in my condo living room, and then I had some in my car, and then I had some in the kitchen, and I just kind of guessed. I remember just plugging random numbers into Shopify because it's just, I was a one woman show and I did what I did. But I started freaking out because I had this video go viral and I woke up the next morning and my Shopify, like cha-ching, kept going off like over and over and over and over. And I thought, oh my gosh, something's wrong. It's broken. Like, what's going on? And then I went into TikTok and I saw that this video had like 300,000 views. And at the time, like I can only ship my product within Canada. So I was getting all these emails from people that were in the States. I wanted to buy the product and they couldn't. And then I was getting all these orders coming through and I started panicking because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to pack. I think I got 150 orders in 2 days or something, which is a lot for one person
Mm-hmm.
who's picking and packing in her living room on her couch. So I remember texting
Mm-hmm.
my friend and she came over and she's an entrepreneur too. And we just folded boxes all weekend and I had all the orders ready and then, put them on my balcony because it was still winter and stored them there. And then I shipped them out on the Monday. But from there on, it was kind of just like steady growth. And occasionally I'd get like the explosive growth from the TikTok or whatever online. And virality really hit differently at that point. It's a little bit different now, but during the pandemic, everyone was just
Everybody, yeah.
spending and consuming. And it was a very different time for consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to monetize that. And it was really exciting and it kept me busy. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have my business during that time. Because it was, we were all alone. I live alone. I had my cat, I was just staying busy building the business. And it got to a point where I had to outsource operations. So I moved from my living room to a manufacturer at the end of 2021, I believe.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that year, 2020, given the situation, but a lot of people, I know creative people on YouTube blew up because there was so much attention on content at that moment. So a lot of people benefited from that. So was that your before prior to 2020? I know 2019, 2020. Was that your first sale? Like setting up that Shopify store and hearing that cha-ching? Was that the first time you made a sale?
The first sale I made was, I think, the day I launched, but it was from like friends and family. So it wasn't a true like sale. Like I think in my first few months I did like $300 in sales or something. And then from there it kind of gradually started to snowball. But I would say then when I've had that first viral video and I had all these orders come in, then I realized, okay, this is an actual business and people want this. This isn't someone who knows me and just wants to support me.
Right.
This is someone who saw the product and wants the product and spending their money on it.
Describe that feeling. Like I haven't experienced that. I'll take that back. I've experienced that when I was a kid years ago when I made something and it was someone gave me money for it, but it's been such a long time creating. You create, it's almost like your baby and you create it and then you get money for it. Describe to how that felt to hear that cha-ching like over and over again.
It was really exciting. It was scary because of, what I told you with my inventory, but I think the coolest thing for me is that I don't know. I saw a problem too. Like I love this product. I created this product for myself initially, right? And it's frustrating as a consumer to go to the grocery store and you can't find a healthier option of the things you love. So you're stuck eating rice cakes or, fruit or whatever. So it's really cool to see people consume and love something that you created from scratch. You created the brand, you created the recipe, it was a labor of love. And the fact that a lot of people were incorporating this into their daily eating habits, it was just a really cool feeling. And knowing that, like, oh, yeah, like I love putting a scoop of this on my oatmeal, or I love having this, when I come home from the gym as like my sweet treat that curbs my sweet tooth. Like, that was the coolest thing for me.
So 2020, what did you finish out in sales that year?
Um, 2020. I didn't do a crazy amount. I think I did like 40 or 50K. And I think I broke even. So I was like scrappy and, reusing boxes that I got from Amazon, picking, packing, shipping from my dining room table, just making it work.
Okay, broke even 40, 50K, transition 2021. So what are we doing now? We're still direct to consumer 2021 or are we in retail by now?
2021, man, because we're in 2024. It feels like forever ago. 2021, I still was doing direct to consumer with the dough that I was making, but I was in the process of getting stuff set up with my manufacturer, which took like 6 months. So I was still doing some sales on the side, but I was trying to get things moved over to our manufacturer. And then we did our first official production run at the beginning of 2022.
Okay, talk to me about that because a lot of people like that process that seems so simple like getting the like what is that? Like how does one even go out? I wouldn't know the first thing to go out and find a manufacturer and to make a type of product. Are you looking for someone that specializes in like gluten free? Because I know when I buy a product, it always says on the label, this product is made in like a gluten free factory and stuff like that. Or is that what you're searching for? And you're just going to Google and just typing that in to find a manufacturer that can do this?
Yeah, it's not that simple. A lot of them don't advertise that they're manufacturers. So, um, if you go into a grocery store and you look at a wall of cookies, it's pretty likely that the same manufacturer makes multiple of those cookies, if that makes sense. So they have their own brand and then they do private label and then they do contract manufacturing for small brands like me. But there's so many things that go into finding a manufacturer. You have to make sure you have the volume. So they have minimum order quantities. So you could find the perfect manufacturer, but if you can't commit to, I don't know, 60,000 units a SKU and you need 4 SKUs, then they're not going to work with you because that's the minimum they need to run through their production line for it to benefit them, right? So basically, when you go to a manufacturer, you have to pitch them and you have to make them believe in the vision. It's almost like an investor. They're investing their time. They're likely investing some money into you because you're small. And why would they work with a small brand when they can go and work with a bigger brand where they can actually make more money? So I had so many conversations with different manufacturers. My product had nuts at the time and it had gluten, so I had to like get rid of the nuts. And then eventually I ended up making it gluten free. So
Hmm.
there was lots of like reiterations of the formula,
Right.
and the minimum order quantity was a huge problem too because I couldn't commit to like 100 kg or 200 kg, whatever it was at the beginning because I was so small. So I was in this weird in between phase where I still was kind of capped out at my current production size with me in the kitchen going in for like 6 or 7 hours a day making as many jars as I could. But then the next jump up was like so high, so there was a gap. So I was able to find a manufacturer that would meet me in the middle. And I'm like, okay, can we start lower and then eventually work our way up? And they were really great to work with. They were patient. They, gave me a lot of mentorship throughout the process because it's not something that's super quick and simple. Like there's so much that goes into it. You have to have shelf life testing. You have to do a test run and make sure the quality of, the first tub is the same as the last tub and the middle tub and, the texture and there's food's very tedious, right? And every time you do a production run, it can come out different, especially if the volumes are different. So it was just a lot of trial and error. And then eventually we did our first production run. And then from there, we launched those into retail.
Wow, sounds like a complicated process for someone. Yikes. 2000, where are we in? 2021, right? You got the manufacturer 2021. You have the manufacturer. So now at this moment, you would think sales are going up now, and then you can fulfill all the orders now. So are you still getting the same amount of orders? You're still living off the social media and all that stuff, or where all your sales are coming from? Or are you in retail stores right now? About to get into retail.
Yeah, so the problem that I ran into was there are so many problems. I was a refrigerated product, first off, which it's really hard to scale a refrigerated product, bootstrapped as well. So, I was running into issues where people would put in the wrong address, they wouldn't be home, and I'd have to throw it out because it would spoil, or I'd have to send out new product. So I decided, okay, maybe this makes more sense for me to go into retail with this specific product. And then that way also people don't have to commit to like $60 of dough. They can buy like one tub for $10, whatever. So pivoted into retail, decided to discontinue selling online in 2022. And we started rolling out into retail, I think by like May-ish. Like it took a while because with retail, you can get a yes in January, but then they'll list you in December. Like it's a very long process. And you have to onboard with a distributor, which that takes 3-ish months, 3 to 6 months, because the distributor sells to the stores and the stores likely won't order directly from the supplier. They want the middleman that they can order from, that they already work with on an ongoing basis, that they order other products from. So I onboarded with a distributor, a national distributor, and then
Hmm.
from there we started
Okay.
getting listings with retailers. And by the end of 2022, early 2023, we were in about 100 doors.
Okay. So let me see if I got this right. So this is interesting. So you would be a supplier.
So I'm a supplier.
You're a supplier. You have to sign with a distributor
Mhm.
to get into a big box retail store. What retail store did you get into?
So we were in like a couple Loblaws, we were in Sobeys, we were in Fortinos, we were in more like boutique stores like Summerhill Market. I'm trying to think what else we were in at that time. Yeah, it came to like 100-ish stores across Ontario.
Okay. So you would think, I mean, products moving.
No, so this is where I ran into the first problem. The product, so I ran into problems with the price point. It was too expensive. The other thing was there were too many servings in a container, so people would find out how much calories were in a container and they didn't want to buy it. And then another problem was the retailers were putting it in the wrong part of the store. So they were putting it next to Pillsbury in the dairy set, but my product is vegan and it has added protein. So when I was going to do demos and handing out samples, my consumers were going to the healthy, like the natural set of the store, and they couldn't find it. And I had to tell them, no, it's in dairy, but they don't shop in dairy, right? So obviously, when you're merchandising, a $10 tub of cookie dough next to Pillsbury, and if the person who's shopping in that part of the store isn't health conscious and they don't really care, they're not going to buy the $10 tub of dough. So that was a few of the challenges that I was running into. And then also the product is just incredibly niche and the market is so small here in Canada. And then, again, going back to the size of the tub, I'd have moms that would buy it for their kids and their kids loved it, but they found it really challenging to eat on the go because there was no spoon and they didn't want to use their hands. So they'd be like driving home and then the kids would be like, I want to eat some. And they can't because their hands are dirty. And
Right.
it was really not user friendly the way that the product was formatted. So I spent probably, I don't know, like 80 hours doing demos and collecting feedback from consumers and basically took all of that data and I'm like, okay, so either I can shut the business down or I can pivot. And I decided to pivot. So I discontinued that product and delisted
Okay.
it out of all those stores, which it costs a lot of money to delist a product. Luckily, a lot of the retailers were generous and they didn't charge me for, the product that was on shelf that they had to mark down. Because typically, when you see a product that's like 50% off or 70% off or whatever, it's probably on its way out. And the supplier usually gets charged back for that because it's a loss, right? So they were very generous with me. And I went back to the drawing board and I went back into product development for like another like 8 months. And we made the product gluten free. We made it single serving. We brought the price point down by half, 50% reduction. The ingredients were cleaner. There was no longer anything artificial in it. So we relaunched that one into close to 200 stores. Again, I ran into a bunch of challenges with that product again. So, but yeah, I'll leave it at that right now.
Yeah, it's amazing because you're telling me all this stuff about getting into retail, and I hear this in, like, if you watch Shark Tank, customer space, we should be listed here, you should be here. And I've been in stores too before where I specifically would get gluten-free stuff, and I know it's higher because I have a stomach condition, so I have to eat gluten-free stuff oftentimes. So it's always a difference. So when I get these gluten-free cookies, that's like $7 or $8 sometimes now with inflation, and I'm looking at it right next to other items, it does make sense why someone would say, "Hey, I just want this because this price is a lot lower." How do you get, like, who determines the position or the space in the market?
The retailer typically. So usually there's a buyer who manages each department. So, the ones that I was dealing with, and again, when you're a small brand, you don't really have a lot of leverage. You don't really get to say where you want to go in the store. You can make suggestions, but usually they just fit you wherever they can, right? And a lot of the bigger stores have a planogram. So that's basically like it's almost like real estate, right? So every product has a home. And that home, like places only get sold a few times a year. So you have to buy shelf space in a lot of these stores. For example, like Whole Foods, every March or whatever, they reset their snack category planogram. And that's when, you'll get listed in there. You can't just get your product listed at any point in the year. They have like set dates when they move stuff around on the shelves. Things stay where they are and it's very specific. So, if you get, again, like I was talking about, the listing process. So, if you're in a local program in a smaller local store or a mom and pop shop, they might just be like, yeah, bring it in tomorrow and we'll put it on shelf. Whereas if you go through like an actual, like a Loblaws or Whole Foods or whatever, they have a whole process that goes behind it. And there's a whole onboarding process, and you have to provide documentation and certifications and fill out forms and pricing. And then eventually they'll list you on shelf, but it takes a lot longer.
Yeah, I've heard stories about how long it takes to get into retail. You're proving the point. So 2000, okay, so you delist the product, you go back in the lab for 8 months to create another product that's gluten free. This brings us up to 2023. And so, what's the story there? How? So I'm assuming if you delist the product, sales probably went backwards in 2022.
Yeah, I wasn't selling really for a good portion.
Nothing, right? So you didn't make any money.
I mean, I lost money. I did have sales, like it was still like pretty consistent with the fall or the year prior, but with the expansion with retail, I was really hoping that it would be a lot more than what it was, but it was just like pretty steady. And then from there, it kind of dropped because I just wasn't selling at all and I had to go back into product development. And so 2023, I relaunched the product. And again, it took a really long time to get all these listings and I was finally getting on shelves. And so, end of 2023, I started onboarding with a new distributor because I was having so many problems. When everything is just working against you
Yeah, I felt
and
that.
you're
Yes.
trying so hard, and then you're like, okay, there's a reason why everything is working against me. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I was losing, not losing hope, but I just wasn't excited to be in this industry anymore. Probably early
Right.
2023, I was getting
I can only
tired and I
imagine.
didn't pay
Hmm.
myself at all either up until this day. I never took a dollar out of the business for myself. Yeah, end of 2023, I got my first big purchase order from my distributor. From there, that was getting distributed nationally.
How much was it?
It was like 20 grand, almost 20 grand. And I got paid probably 30% of it. The rest was chargebacks. So that's the reality of the food space is it's pay to play. And typically when you get listed in a new store, they demand either a listing fee or a slotting fee. So that'll be like 5 grand a SKU, 10 grand Loblaws is known as 30 grand a SKU. So if you have three SKUs, that's $90,000 that you have to pay.
So 90,000 for three products in the store.
Yeah.
Okay, you got paid 20,000. You said it's chargebacks. I mean, explains that chargeback process. What is that?
Yeah, so typically, so for example, so I get the purchase order from my distributor, and then
Mm-hmm.
from there, the retailers order, and I have a broker. So the broker brokers the deals, and she's in touch with all of the retailers and has those relationships. So, we got listed in a bunch of accounts out west. We got listed in a bunch here. We were listed in chains here. We were actually supposed to launch into Whole Foods nationally in March of this year, but I decided to pull the plug before then. But when you get launched into these stores, they want a free fill. So, say you launch into 50 stores or 50 Sobeys. Actually, Sobeys isn't a good example because they have a local program here. But let's say like a Healthy Planet or whatever. They want, they have 30 stores. They want a free case of each SKU per each store. So they want three. So I had three SKUs. They wanted three free cases for each store. So that's 90 free cases of product. So what happens is I get a chargeback of 90 cases off of my invoice. So then that's what I end up getting paid. And then on top of that, when there's product that's damaged, or if I'm on sale, or if, anything happens, like I'm always charged back. It's always the supplier that gets to charge back. So we get these reports that are like biweekly, and they're called MCBs, manufacturer chargebacks. And then it's just all these deductions, and that's off invoice. So typically, yeah, like a lot of brands go through these invoices and they try to fight and get back a lot of these charges that are not justified. So you have to stay on top of it.
Right, but these are big brands that have big teams and everyone that's their focus. A one man show. I can see how the task can be daunting when you're doing this all yourself. I mean, you were still. I mentioned you had one employee at one point helping you.
Yeah, I had one full-time employee. He started off as he had a placement through his school,
Hmm.
and he was part-time, and then he came on full-time, and he was with me for about just over a year.
Okay, so 2023, first big PO, 20,000. But you had a lot of chargebacks. So how did that was the beginning of 03, 2023 or middle? What was that?
So I was working with, again, I'm not going to get into the nuances of it, but it's just, I was with a distributor and I was getting POs, like purchase orders that were less than $1,000, and it was moving really slow. And with food, you're not like, it's like a ticking time bomb. Like you need to move product. And we were moving at such a slow rate that I had to make the choice to onboard with the new distributor. And remember, that takes 3 to 6 months. So I had to move everything over to a new distributor. Finally got the new distributor after months, finally got my first purchase order, and we were kind of getting things going with them towards the end of 2023. I think in September I got my first purchase order from them. So we were doing, we got the big first purchase order, and they were getting more smaller ones kind of coming in, and we were growing and scaling. A few months later, I notified all of my suppliers and my distributor that I was shutting the business down.
So I was curious, like when I read your story, and decided to reach out to you 2024, you shut it down. Whether there's no way you could possibly, was there anything you could sell because you had sold it off or like partnered with someone, or was it just more so you were just like you mentioned you were just tired of doing this? Like, what was the driving force when you shut it down?
Yeah, I'm like a big believer of intuition and like your gut. And that was a huge piece of it is I was starting to sacrifice like my personal health, and I also just know so much about the industry and how impossible it is. You need a lot of money, and there's another brand who is very similar to mine who's technically a competitor, and they had invested so much money into the business, and I raised money, and I don't enjoy raising money.
Oh, you did?
I
Okay.
Yeah, I had two
Oh,
investors.
wow. Okay.
I did a small round. I knew them through a business group that I was in. They're very generous. They were really great people. And they really believed in what I was doing. But unfortunately, the industry is just so challenging, and there's so many things that are stacked against you, and you need so much money to make it work. And eventually you can't really grow a brand just in Canada. So many brands have to move into the US in order to even make it work, right? From a unit economics, there's only so much volume you can do in Canada. And just looking at the math and everything, I was losing money on every unit that was sold, doing projections, looking at the industry, looking at the economy as well. I'd been struggling for 4 years. I was still going to grocery stores on weekends and handing out samples 4 years in. And I did this exercise with a really good friend of mine, and he basically said, okay, write out your terms and conditions for your life. What do you want your life to look like? What terms do you want to live by? So I did this exercise, and then I sat down and I looked at my life, and my life was not in alignment with any of that stuff. And sure, maybe one day it would be, but the odds of getting there anytime soon are very, very, very low. And I also looked around at the industry, and I just realized that I didn't want to be in this space anymore. I love the food space, but in terms of the system and playing within the system and the way that it's built, every industry has evolved except this one. And I want to be an advocate and help it in some shape or form. I don't want to be a supplier and be at the mercy of all these retailers anymore. So there is like a bunch of things that went into this decision. Um, but yeah, mainly I didn't want to do it anymore. And I would have had to raise more money, and I didn't want to raise more money. So with Brodo, I basically used it as a vehicle to discover all of the things. Because when you are a CEO or a chief everything officer, is what I like to say, you have your hands in everything. So you get to truly see what you're good at and what you're not good at, and what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy. And that was one of the most beautiful blessings of this journey for me, was really tapping into everything, every possible aspect of the business. I hate operations. I can do it, but I'm not good at it. It's not my strength, and it's something that I wish that I had the ability to delegate earlier, but it's hard to do that when you don't have money for talent. So for me, I love marketing. I'm really good at storytelling. I'm really good at social media. I'm really good at content creation, building community, getting people excited, and personal branding. And I look at this too, like, yeah, my business failed, but the only time you truly fail is if you completely quit altogether. Like, you can just keep pivoting forever. And I think that's a success. Like, you're one step closer to getting what you want in life and what's meant for you. And I think for me, tapping into marketing and helping people tell their stories, that's kind of what I took away from this experience is, okay, I really love marketing, and I know I can monetize it, and I know it's something that I can do, and it's very much in alignment with my terms and conditions. So I've kind of pivoted to that. And then the other thing that I'm doing that I wanted to do for probably like 10 years is launch a podcast, and that's going to be coming out this month. I just haven't had the bandwidth, or, have kind of had this underlying fear to do it. But I think now is the best time, especially with all of the stuff that I've been through these past few years.
Cool. So as someone that's out there, hopefully a lot of people listen to this episode because I think it's very valuable, that could find themselves in this position. What are, I guess, someone might be on that fence because you create something. Sometimes it's hard to turn away and just close it down and shut it down and know when to pivot. So what are the signs to know, okay, it's time for me to quit this deal and go to something else? Are there signs that people should look for?
For me, I just woke up in the mornings and wasn't happy. And there's going to be, with whatever you do in life, you're not going to be happy all the time, you know? There's going to be hard seasons, and you got to power through. And I think I just got to a point where I was searching for the finish line. I was just constantly thinking, like, when is it going to be over, you know? And I kept saying, like, I wish I could do this. I wish I could do this. And it just didn't become fun for me anymore. I don't know. I think there's a difference between quitting when things are hard versus quitting when things are no longer in alignment for you. Like, it takes a really strong person to quit. A lot of people are stubborn, and, they keep going
Hmm,
because
yeah,
they're
for
scared of
sure.
how others are going to perceive them. And I'm guilty of that. I wanted to, throw in the towel when it didn't work the first time, but I also have a really guilty conscience, and I knew I would regret it if I didn't try to give it another shot. And I did. And I think sometimes there are signs, that the universe shows us. If something is really, really hard all the time and it's never easy, and no matter what you do, you just seem to be swimming against stream for the whole time, I think there's a reason why. I don't think it's meant for you. And I'm a firm believer in that. I think things should be easy sometimes. Not all the time, sometimes. And things should happen for you, whether it be like you have the right person come into your life at the right time, or you make the right connection, or you have some opportunity come through. I think there's a lot of luck that plays into the success of business. It's just, it wasn't my time for this business. And I recognize that. And again, I'm just big believer in gut feeling and intuition. And if you're questioning if this is for you, ask yourself, am I feeling this way because it's hard and it's early and I want to give up? Or have I given this my all and I can't give it anymore?
For sure. Well, Erica, I appreciate your time. This has been valuable. I've learned a lot. I didn't realize, like, I knew, like, going into stores, how much people talked about it. I guess that's why I always thought of myself as a service entrepreneur and not a not a product person, because of the struggles that one goes through. So definitely appreciate your time. Stay on with me for a little bit though. I'm gonna ask you some additional questions after we get off, but I definitely appreciate you giving my audience education. I simply an MBA in how to start a business. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.